Let's start today's video with a box opening of my latest beer stein purchase from eBay. Shipping something as breakable as a beer stein takes some thought if you do not want your buyer to wind up with a worthless broken stein. A broken stein is no good to anyone. The buyer receives something he cannot use, and the seller loses a sale and winds up refunding the money he received from the buyer. Let's face it, we cannot totally predict how a package we ship will be treated on its journey to the buyer. So it is best to pack it well to give it the best chance of arriving in good shape. An unboxing video of my latest beer stein that just arrived today. One thing I noticed about the box is that it didn't have a fragile sticker on it. I'm of two thoughts regarding marking something fragile for shipping. Sure, it might alert the shipper to treat the package more gently, but in some cases, it makes it a target for the less scrupulous among us. I had a beer stein arrive once in a box marked extremely fragile, and the beer stein arrived extremely broken. The seller used foam shipping peanuts in the package. I know that some people hate foam peanuts as they can be messy, but I love them, and I'm always impressed when a seller uses them in a package they send to me. The trick to shipping something breakable is to prevent it from moving about in the box and to have something soft around it to absorb the shock the box receives. There is nothing better than foam peanuts to accomplish this. The seller also wrapped the beer stein in bubble wrap to help protect it during shipping. This is something I also highly approve of. And here we are, my new Zeppelin beer stein, which arrived in perfect condition due to the fine packing job the seller did. This beer stein is a classic example of a reproduction and has been featured in several websites I have visited on Regimental Beer Steins as such. You'll note I said reproduction and not fake. A fake is made to deceive an unsuspecting customer into thinking that they are getting something they are not, and this is not the case with this beer stein. As a matter of fact, I think the pottery company that made it purposely added historical errors into the images they used on the stein to make it clear they were making a reproduction and not trying to deceive anyone. As long as the seller lets the buyer know that they're getting a reproduction and prices the item in accordance to that fact, there's nothing wrong with having a reproduction. And as a matter of fact, it is a good way of getting a beautiful beer stein at a reasonable price. In the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, when the vast majority of reproduction regimental beer steins were made, the beer stein companies had catalogs where a buyer could select the thumb lift, finial, and lithopane they would like for their beer stein. Let's see what selections were made for this beer stein. On the pewter lid, a line holding a shield was selected for the thumb lift, and a crowned imperial eagle serves as the finial. This eagle finial I have seen used as a thumb lift on other beer steins. For the lithopane, a lady in a state of undress was used. In the much more conservative era just before World War I, this would have been a major no-no. But in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, when this beer stein was made, such a lithopane would have appealed to the male customers the pottery company was targeting, and so it was offered. Let's examine some of the errors on this beer stein. The beer stein indicates it is from 1906 to 1909 and has an image of the Graf Zeppelin on it. However, the Graf Zeppelin was not built until 1928, and so was not around in 1906 to 1909. The beer stein also features biplanes, observation balloons, an infantryman, and an anchor for the Navy. On the original regimental beer steins before World War I, images of the various branches of the German military were not mixed. It is fair to say my Zeppelin beer stein is more of a fantasy piece than anything else, but it is still a very beautiful beer stein and now has a place of honor in my collection. Next up, we'll examine another beer stein that I have recently added to my collection. A reproduction Regimental Beer Stein for a German cavalry unit from the period before World War I. The very delicate finial on the pewter lid of a mounted cavalry trooper is what attracted me to this beer stein when I first saw it on eBay. A mark for Kaiser porcelain of West Germany is on the underside of the base. This particular version of the Kaiser mark was used between 1979 to 1990, and so helps to verify when this beer stein was made. The lithopane features a soldier and his sweetheart. My research indicates that this particular lithopane image was not used before World War I, and is therefore another indicator that this beer stein is a reproduction. The beer stein was for a trooper named Mueller to commemorate his service between 1907 to 1910. And as is typical of these steins, has scenes of life in the military, such as saying goodbye to your sweetheart, doing reconnaissance on the enemy, firing on enemy positions, and being in a cavalry charge. All in all, this is an attractive beer stein and joins the cavalry beer stein I discussed in my previous video to make a fine addition to my collection. Next, I'd like to show and discuss with you my German railroad beer stein. I know that including this beer stein in a video on regimental beer steins might seem a bit of a stretch, but in the era just before World War I, the German railways played an important role in the Schlieffen plan, which was Germany's plan on how she would conduct and win a war in Europe. For this reason, I think it is not unreasonable to include this stein in this video. With the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria and his wife on June the 28th, 1914 in Sarajevo, the dominoes that would lead to World War I started to fall. Austria mobilized against Serbia in retaliation for the assassination, which caused Russia to mobilize against Austria in support of Serbia. Germany came in on the side of Austria against Russia, causing France and Britain to come in support of their Russian ally against Germany. Germany was in a predicament where she could wind up fighting a true front war against Russia in the east and France and Britain in the west. This problem was anticipated by Count Alfred von Schlieffen, who was chief of the German General Staff from 1891 to 1906. He devised a plan based on Germany's excellent railway system. Schlieffen assumed the Russians would take considerable time to mobilize before they could invade eastern Germany, so a token number of troops were deployed along the Russian frontier to counter the Russians. The vast majority of the German military would sweep at great speed through Belgium into France, dashing along through France to surround Paris and engage and defeat a weak French force from the rear. He assumed he could defeat the French in under 6 weeks and then used the rail system to redeploy the German army to the east to counter the Russians. The plan fell apart. The Belgians, rather than allow the Germans to invade without resistance, put up a considerable fight, including blowing up roads, bridges, and rail tunnels, stopping the rapid movement through Belgium using the rail system. The French, also not as weak as thought, also slowed the German advance into France. The Russians mobilized much faster than expected and invaded Prussia, forcing the Germans to divert troops from France to the Eastern Front, stalling the German advance into France and resulting in a stalemate of trench warfare that would last for 4 long years at a cost of 40 million military and civilian casualties. The pewter lid for this beer stein features a steam locomotive for the finial and a crowned German eagle for the thumb lift. Along the top of the beer stein, just below the fringe band, is a picture of a train crossing a rail bridge that wraps 3/4 of the way around the stein. And there are additional pictures of rail bridges and an old automobile on the body of the stein as well. The stein is unmarked but has the same body style as the Goetz of West Germany stein I own, and so I am sure this stein is made by Goetz as well. Though it is not technically a regimental beer stein, it is still very nice and a fine addition to my collection. We have come to the last reproduction German Regimental Beer Stein I'm going to show and to discuss in this video. My beer stein for the German Army Pioneers. The Pioneers, or as they were called in other armies, the sappers, construction battalions, or engineers, were responsible for building bridges, fortifications, and other projects for the Army's use. They were also tasked with destroying these same items to deny their use by the enemy. Before World War I, there were 35 pioneer battalions in the German Army, and they were considered a separate arm of the Army, same as the infantry, cavalry, field artillery, and foot artillery. The pewter lid has a finial of a seated German pioneer raising his canteen in salute and has a stylized serpent for the thumb lift. This thumb lift is quite typically used on reproduction beer steins. To reinforce the fact that this is a reproduction regimental beer stein, there is a sticker marked "Made in Western Germany" on the underside of the base. This stein appears to be for the 4th Company of the 21st Pioneer Battalion, based in Mainz, Germany, and was presented to a pioneer named Weeb to commemorate his service from 1904 to 1906. There are a number of German phrases on the stein, and I used Google Translate to try and find out what was being divulged on the stein. Hopefully Google Translate comes close to what the translation is for these phrases. On the beer stein, just below the fringe band, is this phrase: "We are the Kaiser's loyal pioneers," and below that, "to commemorate the Kaiser maneuvers in the Tanis Mountains in September 1905. On the body of the stein, there is a picture of a group of pioneers building a pontoon bridge that has the phrase below it: "Pioneers are a strong corps." A picture of a completed pontoon bridge with a town behind it has the phrase, "We practice on the water and the land." There is a picture of a group of pioneers in a tavern with the phrase, "Raise the glasses, long live the reservist men." And finally, there is a campfire scene with the phrase, "Where is the courage when you rest in the bivouac?" Well, folks, that's it for this video. If you like what you saw, hit that like button. Till next time, keep safe and well.